Hey, welcome everybody to the Tom and James Show. And listen, folks, we have some rather interesting news. Apparently, James, did you know that virtually every time you're on this program with me, somebody has, you start fires. You bring up topics that just, they challenge traditional prophecy thinking. And here's what I think happens. We're going to get into one of them in a few minutes. It's the rapture. And here's what happens is there's so many Bible prophecy teachers out there that have been teaching something that's been handed down for generations. And they've never really studied the passage itself, and they've just always gone along with regurgitated what they've heard before. And you and I pointed out some things over the last several years, but lately you pointed out several things, and one of them being some rapture interpretations that I want to get into today, not alone to mention the fig tree, which really stirred up a hornet's nest amongst a few other things. But I want to go there. But so it is true, isn't it? Every time you're on my show,
stirring up. It's you, Tom. You want to stir up the trouble.
I do. I like to stir it up. Listen, I think that people need to think, and they're just told something and they believe it and go with it. And unfortunately, some of these things are just traditional teachings. But I like to stir up people to think. I don't like getting yelled at online and those kind of things, and neither do you, but it does happen. But nevertheless, I think that Christians do themselves good if they think about some of the things. But with that, before we get to the rapture, and I know it's going to stir up a little bit of a hornet's nest, however, we got some facts we want to lay out too. Let me ask you about this, James. We've been watching this Abrahamic Accord and the different peace deals, UAE, now Bahrain, and we're watching a lot more movement over there in people wanting to have normalization with Israel. Now, I'm going to throw in another monkey wrench. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm just going to read this because it throws another monkey wrench in there that just shows us, man, how close are we to the Ezekiel 38 prophecies being fulfilled? Listen to this. This is just an article from this week. 6-nation Mediterranean gas group forms without Turkey to strengthen regional cooperation. Now check this out, James. Greece, Italy, Egypt, Israel, and 2 other countries will form a permanent organization to promote cooperation over natural gas in the Eastern Mediterranean. Turkey is not included. Energy ministers from the group, which also includes Cyprus and Jordan, signed a charter to establish the East Mediterranean Gas Organization. Egypt's Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources said on Tuesday. The body will be based in Cairo and focus on strengthening regional cooperation. Other Eastern Mediterranean countries can join, the statement said. This sounds like the peace agreement that's going on, except this is over gas and oil, which we look at Ezekiel 30. This is phenomenal. Without giving further detail, the representatives from the U.S. Department of Energy and the European Union signed the agreement as observers. This is really incredible. Today is an historic moment, Egypt's oil minister said. Once the organization is up and running, we will soon see important projects that add value to all of our countries. I look at this, to me, this is just this is incredible. To watch all of the events and then have this thrown in here regarding oil and gas, Turkey not included, Russia not included, Iran not included, all these other countries are included. Am I seeing too much in this, or what do you think?
No, what you're looking at. Look, did you notice me go?
Yeah, I did. Oh yeah, it was good.
That's what happens skill. When I got a lot going through my mind, and I've got quite a few things to say, and I don't know what to say first. It's kind of a weird thing. Yeah, this is significant. This is really significant, and most definitely, it does remind me a lot of what we know is going to happen per Ezekiel 38 and 39, for sure. So this is a dynamic, and let me lay it out for our listeners who aren't making the connection in particular. Right now, what you are basically watching is you are watching the effective economic lockout of Turkey of Russia, of Iran, because Iran is being effectively locked out by new sanctions that have been passed down that are agreed to by many of these surrounding nations. And eventually that's going to pass down to Libya and some of these other nations that are involved in the attack of Ezekiel 38. Now, what we know of from Ezekiel 38 and 39 is that these attacks are going to be inspired by the fact that the people attacking Israel want what Israel has, right? Namely, I'm going to guess it's going to be many of their natural resources, things like energy. Israel clearly has become energy independent. We know that. They've been energy independent for quite some time. Even as it relates to the way that they handle their own water, it's pretty unique when you think about what they have actually done. They really are unique in that sense. Europe, or this area of Europe that's signing these deals, is pretty incredible, because what they would have normally been dependent upon is they would have been dependent upon some kind of a pipeline that would come from Russia to be able to supply oil back and forth, right? This is a very, very interesting thing. By this agreement being signed, Russia gets X'd out. It's a direct repudiation to China. It is most definitely a signal that's being sent to OPEC saying, hey, we might want to go to the table with you, but we're going to bypass everybody else. And quite frankly, Israel may even go so far as to allow rights to run the pipeline through areas of the Mediterranean surrounding up into this area of Europe. And in essence, what effectively happens is Russia is straight out of the picture. Iran has no effect. It's really, really, really interesting. And the energy interests that exist within Syria really, in essence, are belonging to the United States, because that is the small contingency of soldiers that we have left behind in the region. Those are going to be the soldiers that are holding on to the oil interests that, of course, the president rightly believes is effective payment for all of the stabilization work and rebuilding work that we've actually done in the region. So what, in essence, this does is it increases the desperation that exists with Erdogan, with Putin, and with all of these other people that are surrounding these areas to be able to solidify their energy independence. Now, don't get me wrong. Erdogan is running around saying, we got this. Look, we discovered huge oil in the Mediterranean. It's all there, yet there's no evidence to be able to substantiate it, because he is still attempting to furiously, at a voracious pace, drill in the Mediterranean, and it looks like he's not getting any real luck. So Turkey's dependence upon energy is becoming more and more and more obvious. They have been very purposefully and in a very calculated way ixnayed out of this agreement, and it's in essence the United States' silent way and the EU's silent way of being able to say, we don't like your behavior. We think you moving into the Mediterranean to do what you're doing is a violation of what's happening on international grounds. And considering the fact that the United States of America still has a relatively good relationship with Turkey, per the relationship that Trump has with Erdogan, they're not doing anything that exists in the form of an official sanction. They're basically saying we're supporting this agreement, this economic agreement that's going on in this portion of Europe, understanding the fact that if Turkey wants a piece of this action, they can jump on, so long as they're willing to knock off all the nonsense that they're trying to do right now. Erdogan won't have anything to do with it. He'll still play nice with Trump, because he knows that Trump has the power of the force of the United States of America. And so he's going to continue to play nice, not like completely, I'm going to kiss up to you, Trump, but he's certainly going to play nice enough to kind of create his own boundary lines. But truth be told, it gets a lot more significant than that, in that the defense of the border that is going to be on the east end of Turkey is now left up to the responsibility of the Turks. And what's even more interesting than that is that as they are beginning to take on the responsibility of policing their own borders, energy independence has become so much more critical to Turkey, which is why, can you smell it? The desperation is increasing and increasing. increasing and increasing. And before you know it, what's going to end up happening, you mark my words, are these guys are going to develop closer relationships with Israel. They're going to want to have that kind of reciprocal prosperity. But what's going to happen is every effort that they make to do so is not going to suffice it for them, because they're not going to have what Israel has. They're not going to have independence. And as a result, you know what they're going to do? They're going to attack Israel. And when they do attack Israel, guess what? God's going to defend them. And it's going to be a remarkable fulfillment of prophecy.
Yeah, I find this absolutely incredible to watch from the geopolitical side. You know, there's different signs in the Bible regarding the second coming of Christ. And you look at this one, there's signs with natural disasters. You just start lining them up. But the geopolitical ones, it is just unbelievable how just in the last 30 days, the alignment, the peace agreements, and now this taking place. And then you look in Ezekiel chapter 38, the attack from Russia and Iran and Turkey comes at a time when Israel is dwelling in peace and safety. And, you know, I'm looking at these peace agreements. I am thinking that is the direction all of this is going. And you also look at it this way. Israel, until recently, had no knowledge of any oil or gas that they had any at all. And yet all of their neighbors had oil and gas, but they didn't have any. And then suddenly you come to the last days where God says that this invasion is going to happen against Israel, and you can tell that it's because of it's plunder that they want. There's a resource that Israel has that Turkey and Russia desperately want, and Iran wants to eliminate Israel anyways. So you look at this and you realize Russia and Turkey are being cut out, and they don't have the ability to sell any resources. Russia's lost their ability or is losing their ability. Turkey thinks they have it, but might not even be able to produce it. And now Israel is becoming this, they're becoming like the strongest nation in the world when you start looking at what's happening right now in their alignment with these Arab nations, and then with this agreement over oil and gas. It is just mind-boggling to see how all of this is developing right now, all at the exact same time. I just find it absolutely fascinating.
Well, and it's interesting because I get stopped all the time and I get told, well, James, slow your roll with your stance on Russia, because Russia has plenty of energy. They have all kinds of oil resources, and they have all kinds of other resources that they could definitely harness from within their nation. And then I tell them this. I say, well, it's like you coming to me and telling me that you have the ability to get in a mode of transportation that will get you from 0 to 60 in a few seconds, and you can go anywhere you want in the country, except for the fact that you have a Lamborghini that's 2 inches off the ground, and you're living in a house that's in the middle of nothing but off-road territory. What good is a Lamborghini? You can't drive that thing anywhere. There are no roads made for it. You're through. And that's exactly what's going on with the pipeline system that exists from within Russia. I mean, what good is the oil that you have if you can't transport it? What good is the energy resources that you have if you can't harness it for purposes of driving the mechanism that keeps everything alive in the country? That's the whole point. So they're kind of dead in the water in many ways. And what they're trying to bring in or export out becomes dead in the water, because if they don't have the road for the proverbial Lamborghini, they really, truly, in essence, don't have the Lamborghini, if you know what I mean. I mean, that's in essence, it's like, what good is it? It's like someone coming up to me and saying, well, James, beta is the best, beta tracks, those are the best ways to listen to music. And I might say, okay, yeah, you're right. It was warm and sounds really great or whatever, but who's got a beta player?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm outdating myself. People listen to me and they go, my goodness, I don't even know what you're referring to, James. The other day, same thing. I had a cassette tape that had one of the very first Bible studies I ever taught 27 years ago. And I told myself, gosh, I really want to listen to that. Good luck trying to find a cassette player, right? It's hard. So what good is it?
It's hard to find a DVD player anymore, let
right?
alone.
I mean, but that's and that's exactly right. So that, in essence, is the problem that we're facing right now. This is, in essence, the issue that we're dealing with. The issue that we're dealing with at this very moment is the fact that Russia might have a few internal resources, but where is the mechanism to deploy those resources? How does it even get used? So that's why this deal is so significant, because this deal is basically going to Russia and Turkey and basically saying it's a direct repudiation to them. It's basically saying, don't need you. Oh, and by the way, Merkel in Germany, tough luck. You can take your nonsense that you're messing around with as it relates to Russia, and you can keep it. You and the Russians can stay in bed, and you can continue to have your fun. But you know what? You'll be the next Ukraine.
Yeah.
And that's in essence what's going to happen.
Yeah, you bet. Europe overall hasn't been real friendly with Israel for the most part. But Russia, they realize is a problem for them. And Russia really has had a stranglehold on Europe with the gas for a long, long time. And although Europe's not always real friendly with Israel, they'd much rather have an agreement with Israel than they would with Russia. And they sure don't want one with Turkey. At least I'm thinking they don't want one with Erdogan being president of Turkey. You have the political side of it. In the same sense, you have Iran and the peace agreements. Listen, these Arab communities, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They'd rather be friends with Israel right now than have to deal with Iran on their own. And I see That's a similar dynamic that is taking place with the oil and gas. They'd rather into agreements with Israel than be struck in some kind of stranglehold with Russia or Turkey.
That's right.
So ready for this one? Now we're going to stir up the hornet's nest a little bit.
Thank you for that, Tom.
And by the way, we have a prophecy conference coming up November 8th, Sunday. It's going to be fantastic. James, you're going to be speaking that morning. We have Don Stewart lined up. We have you, myself. We have Andy Woods. And we have David Towles going to be flying in from Israel, it appears.
How's that going to go, Tom? I'm going to do the morning services, and then we got all kinds of other stuff going on in the afternoon, and then we're doing a Q&A in the evening. Is that what's going to happen?
It's going to be great. It's going to be all day. We'll even have food. Of course, this is assuming that we don't go into some lockdown because we all got arrested for having a big service during COVID. But hey, we've been going okay so far. Your church is going through it right now.
We're still, you know what? The health department just called to threaten us, and guess what? We're still doing what we're going to be doing. Sorry.
Yeah. So we're moving. Yeah, we're moving forward. I'm excited about November 8th. It'll be at 412 Church in San Jacinto, California, Southern California. We'll have information online for that pretty soon. Okay. I want to talk about the rapture because this is the passage that just grinds away at people. You and I both agree there is a rapture. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 tells us that it talks about the rapture, the catching up, the harpazo, whatever you want to term it, but we use this English word, the rapture, which we get from the Latin. Okay, so the rapture's in the Bible. I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. You believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. I got a whole lot of emails over the last 2 weeks saying the rapture was going to happen last weekend, and we're still here. Anyways, that's another story. That was the Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpets, rapture theory that comes around every year. Okay.
Every single
But with that, here's the monkey wrench. It's 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come. This is speaking of the day of the Lord, the tribulation period. That day will not come unless the falling away comes first and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition. Okay, so people read that and say, okay, the falling away is talking about a great apostasy from the faith. That's what people are saying now anyways, a great apostasy from the faith. And it also says, and the Antichrist is going to be revealed, which that gives support to people who believe in a mid-trib rapture. But anyways, you read this, and James, I'm studying, reading Andy Wood's books and other writings on this passage, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and all the old translations, listen to this. The earliest English translations translated the Greek noun apostasia in 2 Thessalonians as departure or departing, meaning a physical departure, not a spiritual departure, not a spiritual apostasy, but a physical departure. In other words, a catching up to meet the Lord in there. And he quotes them. The Wycliffe Bible, 1384, the Tyndale Bible, the Coverdale, the Cranmer Bible, Breach's Bible, the Beza Bible, the Geneva Bible, they all interpret it as a physical departure until came along the Catholic Bible, the Reims Bible, in 1576, and they changed the translation because to fit a spiritual apostasy because they looked at the Protestant Reformation as a departure from the Catholic Church, a departure from the faith. And hence, here we are. And then the King James took a shot at the Catholic Church and said the Catholic Church had departed. So that's how the King James Bible interpreted that. And then here we are, all these years later, forgetting what the original translators were, and we're arguing about this, and people are calling you and I horrible names for even saying this is talking about the rapture, not a spiritual apostasy at the end days.
Yeah, that's right. So it's actually unbiblical to actually say that it's some kind of a spiritual apostasy. When you look at the Greek language, you look at the original word, apostasia, very, very clearly here, especially based on the context, makes direct reference to the fact that we are talking about a physical departure, the departure. By the way, the context of the whole passage brings light to that fact. I mean, think about it. Look, let me just read it from verse 1. He says, now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and I'm translating this directly from the Greek language, so hopefully it makes a little bit more sense, right? So now regarding the coming of our Lord Jesus, the Messiah, and our being gathered to him or being brought together to him, we ask you, our brethren, to not be easily upset or agitated in mind or troubled or bothered in your spirit or by some kind of a message through a letter as if it were imposed by us, alleging that the day of the Lord has come. Don't let anybody deceive you in any of these ways, for that specific day will not come unless the physical departing, literally, unless the departing comes first and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction. And he begins to talk about the Antichrist. And so the whole idea here is that don't worry about these things. There's a lot of people that were telling the Thessalonian church, hey, listen, the rapture has already happened. We're approaching the tribulation. Look at what's going to go on. Look at what's happening with everything around us. Caesar Nero's going to start getting crazy. The things are being very unsettled. The stability of even the very temple is at stake here. Bad things are happening. We are in the tribulation. The Apostle Paul said, don't let anybody lie to you. All of that is baloney. He says, the Antichrist himself won't be revealed until we're taken, until we actually have physically departed. Now, a lot of people will say, well, why in the world would he not use the same term harpazo that he uses in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4? Well, that's a very easy one. If I'm trying to explain a circumstance to you, if I'm trying to reiterate an initial statement that I make, I'm not going to keep making that statement. I'm not going to keep making the same statement. If I say John jumped over the hill and you say, well, James, what do you mean John jumped over the hill? How can anybody jump over a hill? And I go to you and I say, well, let me explain. I'll make myself clear. John jumped over the hill. Well, James, you don't understand. I don't understand what that means. I mean, what do you mean when you say John jumped over the hill? What size was the hill? And is John like some subhuman person that can just, jump higher than anybody else? I mean, what does that mean? Look, Tom, I'm getting sick and tired of you asking me the same question. I can't be any more clear. John jumped over the hill. Well, that doesn't make sense, does it? If you're coming to me and you're asking me to provide for you some kind of a clarification, I am going to use a different word, a different set of words to be able to describe the very same concept, right? So if you're having a hard time with the concept of me being snatched up, as I wrote to you in my first letter, and you're having a difficult time still, you're not really receiving this. I just finished telling you we're going to get snatched up. I told you to comfort one another with these words. I told you that, listen, this is going to happen as a thief in the night, but it's not going to be that way for you. You know what to expect. I've already given you everything, and you go, yeah, but I'm still scared. Well, then I'm not going to say, look, I told you. Let me say the same thing over again. No, I'm going to say, I told you, I made you aware. Let me reiterate what I just told you. Let me offer you a different subset of words so that you'll be able to understand what's going on. And this is, again, a language issue. This is a huge language issue. And in most cases, context, matter of fact, in every case, context actually means something, even within the particular definition of a word. And I can tell you how this works in language. It's very interesting how this works in language. I can tell you, for example, I can go to you in Arabic and I can say, now, I just told you, literally, if I were to translate that word for word without any context associated at all, I just went to you and I said, hey, go into the ice and get me something cold. That's literally what I told you. Now, that doesn't make any kind of sense. The context is when you look at what I'm actually saying and the environment that we're in, I could be, my mouth could be a little dry. I would be saying, hey, go to the fridge and grab me a Coke. That is what you would call a dynamic equivalent translation. And in some cases, you must look at it that way. Now, don't get me wrong. The Greek language is a very much word for word type of a language, right? And even in the word for word subsets, you still have to use sometimes a dynamically equivalent approach to be able to come to the conclusion with respect to the original language word that you're looking at. So in this case, the whole context is the rapture. The whole context is the Antichrist when he's going to come. How in the world does it make any kind of sense to insert a completely different meaning to a commonly used word that in the past has always meant what it originally implied? It doesn't make sense. It's people being dishonest with the translation. Now, the next question that comes up is, does that mean we don't trust our translation? No, it doesn't mean that at all, because it's very feasible to say that it could mean that. It's just for whatever reason the translators chose to ignore the existing context, which would establish that, right? And by the way, we see this all the time all over the Bible. Here's one that's going to make a bunch of people mad, and everyone's going to call me a heretic, and they're going to bag on my chair, and they're going to call me fat, and they're going to say all kinds of other stupid things about me, but that's okay. I'll just tell the truth. What about the word agape? Everybody says the Greek word agape means God's unattainable love. You've got eros, you've got phileo, and then you've got agape. That's wrong. I don't care who's taught it over the years. It's a misappropriation of the Greek language. You don't understand the Greek language if you come to the conclusion that agape every single time is God's love that only anybody can attain. Here's the problem that I have with that, right? Later on in Timothy, you hear, having loved agape this present world. Talking about somebody who had just backslidden. That's agape. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me that a guy has God's love backsliding for the evil world system? Ooh, we've got a problem, folks. This is where context makes a big difference. This is where you've got to look at context and say, okay, it means something. If I say I love pizza, it's a completely different thing than saying I love my wife. Am I using the same word? You're darn straight I'm using the same word. Does it have a different meaning? It has a different meaning. You have the same exact problem here in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. And the argument, by the way, is rock solid. It's a rock solid argument. Anybody that has any background in original language will be able to tell you that. It's the truth, you guys. I can't pick and choose what the truth is. But it is definitely talking about the fact that we were, or that he's referring to the rapture. By the way, I am coming from the view that has always looked at it as an apostasy or a rebellion, because that's what I've been taught, and I never really did truly dig into it. And the time that I chose to dig into it was about 4 months ago at a Q&A session where somebody told me this interpretation. I said, you better not listen to that guy. That guy's a kook. And they told me, well, James, you're calling Andy Woods a kook. You're calling J.D. Fudge a kook. You're calling Don Stewart a kook. I said, let me get back to you because maybe you're misunderstanding something. So I called Don, and then I call Andy, and then Andy sends me this incredible book, which, by the way, is very found in facts. Is very impressed with the book that he wrote here. And Andy's just got a lot of integrity. The guy is not going to lie for anybody. He's not going to cheat or fake just so that he can sell a book. That's not the way the guy is. And so I talked to him, and I'm like, wow, that argument makes a whole lot of sense. And so I started researching it. I'm like, I really beat myself up. I was asking myself, how on God's green earth could I have not seen this?
Yeah.
What an error.
Yeah. So there's others too. J. Dwight Pentecost. Even Tim LaHaye. People think there's no way Tim LaHaye would have taught that. Well, Tim LaHaye actually taught that too. Thomas Ice teaches it. Kenneth Wiest. You start looking at it going, well, how did this get so much into mainstream teaching, including myself? I had taught that for years. Here's the thing is, the Bible does teach a great apostasy in the last days. There is people buy into the doctrine of demons. They have a form of godliness but deny the power thereof. And you start looking at all these different things that the Bible does say about the last days that people believe. There is a great departure from the faith. But this passage does not support that. This passage actually supports a pre-tribulation rapture, a departure, a physical departure from this earth, and then the man of lawlessness is revealed. Antichrist is revealed after that. James, I know you stirred up a hornet's nest. That's one of the reasons I love having you here so much. Actually, it's just to get the truth out. And we've taken a lot of subjects over the last several weeks, and the pot's been stirred, and we've lost some viewers and followers over it. That's okay, because I would rather deal with the truth and have a healthy conversation, even a debate, than just sit there and just go along with, well, they said it, therefore I believe it. It's looking at the Bible. What does the Bible actually teach? Listen, Jesus is coming again. In closing, James, this is our great hope, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, the Lord's coming soon. And that's one of the things that we got to look at. And knowing that the Lord is coming soon, how much more should it motivate us to be occupying till he comes? How much more should it motivate us to be standing up for righteousness? That's why when I do my videos every day, oftentimes I'm talking about issues that relate to politics, issues that relate to some of the hotbed items that we're facing right now as a nation. Why? Because more than ever, we have an obligation to keep our mouths open about these things and to continue to bring them into the light so that people will see them and respond accordingly.
Yep. Yep. All of the things that we see happening, as you look at Bible prophecy, you realize this is the direction everything is going. Jesus says when you have a right understanding of this, he teaches. When you have that right perspective, it reminds us he is coming. It is the cause for great hope. Some of the things can be discouraging. That's why we got to stay in the Word. James, how can people follow you?
Well, you can go to our YouTube page, which is Calvary Chapel Signal Hill. That's really simple. Just Calvary Chapel Signal Hill on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram. That is at James Cadiz. On Facebook, I think I'm at james.cadiz. Yeah, we'd love to have you go over there and take a hold. And we have also a Real Hope with Tom and James. I think that's what it is. It's Real Hope with Tom and James. You can go there, and we've got that there. And that just exclusively lists all the things that Tom and I do together. That's what we put up there, and it's a great YouTube page. We got lots of people that are joining that and watch videos there too. So, and then of course, Tom's going to talk about his YouTube channel, and we need to grow that thing big time so that as the censorship attempts continue, we'll have a lot more influence in being able to stop that.
Yeah. So I appreciate that, James. You can, this YouTube channel where you're watching this, if you haven't subscribed to it yet, I ask you to. Also, make sure that you share these videos that we do, these podcasts that we do. The more you share them, the more desks and phones these videos come across so people can view and hear the truth for themselves. We have the answer. We have the gospel of Jesus Christ, and he is, not only did he come the first time to save us, he is coming again. And these are the things that we talk about, and we put them into the context of the things that are happening right now in America and throughout the world. You can also follow me on Facebook and on Instagram and even on Parler. And again, November 8th, Prophecy Conference, Sunday, Southern California. It's going to be an absolutely terrific time, and it's free. And there's no tickets required. It's free. But if it fills up, it fills up. Listen, it's going to be great. James, thank you for today.
All right, bro. It's been a blessing as usual.
Shalom.
Shalom.
I wasn't sure how you said that in Arabic.
I would say salam, which is it's kind of different, similar. Or salam alaikum wa alaikum wassalam. There's different ways of saying it. That was kind of the Muslim way of saying it, but there's many different ways that we would say.
How about
probably
this?
15 different ways. Even in Hebrew, there's many different ways to say it.
How about this? See you later.
Okay. Anybody who's Russian will know what that means. It
was
a Russian greeting. Anyone who speaks that would know that one.
Bye.
All right. Bye.